on the News Channel 5 network. This is Open Line.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. I'm Carrie Sharp. Great topic for you tonight, something I think that you're going to want to chime in on. This is a topic that seems to strike a chord with folks living in Nashville, a city on the rise. We're talking about a proposal in front of the Metro Council that really takes aim at both creating affordable housing here in our city and also tax incentives to lure companies here. I have one of the two architects behind this ordinance here with me, Fabian Bednay, council member. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm honored to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, we're glad you're going to spend the next hour with us talking about this. Colby Sledge, I should also say, is working with you on this ordinance. Let's talk about that first. And I do want to remind you, this is Open Line. If you have a question or a comment, feel free to call in. The number's at the bottom of the screen. But let's start with this ordinance. It's gone through the first reading. Can you explain what it is?
Sure. I also want to say that John Cooper, Councilmember Cooper, just signed off on the legislation, so he's the other sponsor. So I'm very honored to have two important people in the council supporting the legislation. The legislation is very straightforward. It basically states that every time with budget and incentive, half the incentive will go to the company and half will go towards covering the impact that that incentive will have in the city. The issue when we talk about affordable housing, I know people get very confused about what it means, Section 8, that type of thing, but in reality, affordable housing it covers a wide spectrum of things. And if I may
Yes, please.
So my background is I've been involved with nonprofits for a long time and also in architecture. And the one thing that many people don't understand is that you don't have to be like terribly poor to be at risk of losing your house.
Yes.
Over the years, I've helped veterans, for example, who come back from war with their legs gone and they need a wheelchair ramp to get to their house, or they need an accessible bathroom to be able to use their house. And so we help them. I mean, the community or the nonprofit sector or the government will want to help them stay on their house. We're talking about elderly people that all their lives live on a home and they are coming to a moment where the income they have doesn't allow them to do the repairs they need to do to be able to age in place. We're talking about our teachers, our police officers, our firemen, people that are on a fixed income again and that we want them to continue being part of the community. So all this complexity of things, each person has a different issue that they need help with so they can stay and be part of the community. So the Barnes Fund was created by Mayor Carl Dean, and I was one of the sponsors of that legislation. And the idea is to create a local way to address the needs of our community. And it's been very successful, but it doesn't have the level of funding that it needs. And I can go on and on.
Well, tell me what the Barnes Fund is meant to do, because I think right now I read it's about a $10 million balance.
Yeah.
What is it meant to do?
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, there's no requirement that we fund the Barnes Fund to a certain level. So that's one of the problems that we find, because we want them to be able to have long-term plans on building and supporting long-term plans in the community. So if they don't know how much money they will have next year, that kind of defeats the purpose of running a stable impact in the community. So we created legislation last year, and the mayor adopted it, that looks to have different approaches in dealing with affordable housing. One is to preserve the housing stock, to repair the housing stock, and to also build new housing stock, right? So, and not to do it on the suburbs or in places where the land is cheap, but to do it where it's going away. So we have families that live all their lives in Woodbine, or East Nashville, or North Nashville, West Nashville, and they are just having a hard time staying there, mostly if they are paying rent. The rent goes up, they can't stay there anymore.
Right, so, and the landlord has great incentive to sell that land right now, and another tall and skinny goes up, or very architecturally pleasing house. But people who are in the service industries, who are firefighters and teachers, like you said, can't afford to stay, are being pushed out of Nashville where they work.
That's right.
So the Barnes Fund is there, and one of the incentives is so developers can go there and say, I want an incentive to build affordable housing, right?
Yes.
So they can tap into those resources and buy the land?
Well, yeah, and so the beauty of the system is there's a board that will review all the applications. They will put an RFP, request for proposals, and people will go with different ideas, right?
Right.
And that's the beauty of it, that is a very dynamic, very hands-on, very precise, surgical way to find what the problems that we are facing this year and the next 5 years, how to address those problems. So the Barnes Fund, the Commission, will review all these applications, and if they meet the guidelines, they may approve them or not. That is a really good way to do it, because the people that are on this board are members of the community as well. So we are not relying on some Washington bureaucrat. I hope there's nobody watching TV making decisions about how we should address the needs of Nashville. This is a Nashville solution to a Nashville problem. And the way I look at it is that the biggest problem we face with this fund is, first of all, that there is no there's not a dedicated fund, that there is not a long-term
It's not a revenue stream, really.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that is one of the problems I see. And the other one is that obviously the more money is there, the more people will be able to help. So, and we're not just talking about people that are extremely low income. We're talking about people that are lower middle class, people that are facing the pressure to be able to stay on their home. And again, we're not talking about investing $250,000 on a house. Sometimes it's just $5,000 or less that you can do to help an elderly person stay on the house, because you change the bathroom and now they can actually use it and they can take care of that problem. So it's just really, the idea is to be very surgical about how we address these issues.
So we needed to explain the Barnes Fund so that we can understand the rest of this ordinance, how it all pieces together. What are you asking of the city when it goes out and says, Amazon, come here, we will offer you 15 million, 100 million in incentives over so many years. You want another piece of the puzzle there that will help people who already live here.
That's right. So first of all, this is not a for or against incentive legislation. I'm not making a case against providing incentives or for doing incentives. What I'm saying is that as we do incentives, we have to look at the whole picture. There is an impact with incentives. I'll give you an example. You mentioned Amazon. So if Amazon comes in, thousands of people move to the city, they will be looking for homes. So all of a sudden the cost of housing will increase in Nashville. And many people that will again see that pressure, maybe they were renting a house, now their landlord will say, you know what, I can
raise that price.
That's right. So how do we help those people to stay in Nashville? Not the new people, they're welcome, you know, we want the city to grow, to create more revenue and all that, but how do we help our local residents that live here? I've lived in Nashville for like 25 years, and I have been blessed to be able to afford a home and own a home. But the people that rent, they're always in a critical situation to be able to do that. So I want us to be creative about finding ways to keep these people, as many of those people that build this city, that pay taxes for all these years, to benefit from the growth that we had experienced.
So as your ordinance is written now, which is a proposal, what are you asking of the city?
Basically, that for every dollar they propose to spend on an incentive, that a dollar goes to the Barnes Fund. And so some people say, so you're doubling the incentive. I'm saying, no, if you budget $50 million on incentive, half of that should be for the incentive and half of it should go towards covering the impact of that incentive.
Do you think that this will hurt our chances to lure some big companies like an Amazon or some of these other firms that are investing here in Nashville?
Well, that's a risk. That it's a real risk to say, but do we really want a company come into town that will create an impact that will displace our people if we are not really taking that into account? So the idea is to be more healthy in how we do these things, and if we are going to work with a company that comes to town, that company probably wants to come to a city that is healthy, where their employees can actually work here and live here, and we don't have this inflation pressure, because you know, when the cost of rent goes up, then the employees have to pay more to the employees, and then everything starts going up, and pretty soon the cost of living kind of kill the golden goose egg. So we want to remain a competitive city.
What about the cost to the city? Can the city afford to do this?
Yes, I'm convinced it can, because we're already spending an amount of money on affordable housing. So And that's one of the things that I'm going to defer the legislation tomorrow so I can tweak something. The goal is not to add to the commitment we already make as a city, but to make it part of that commitment, but also to create a baseline so whoever is the next mayor, if it doesn't make the commitment to spend the amount of money we're spending in incentives, to make sure that it's there, that there's always that connection between the incentive and the impact of the incentive.
And kind of peeling back that curtain, you were telling me before the show began that this is really, you met with the budget committee, you've had the first reading, which is just a formality, but this is really how legislation works, is presenting it and then really kind of kneading it like some dough of a bread and working where it needs to go.
Yeah, by state law, we are not permitted to talk to each other. And so the first time I get to learn from my peers is at committee meetings. And so I got some very good feedback today that I'm planning on using so I can adjust my legislation. And I'm hoping that the same will be with your listeners. I want to know how people feel about it so I can improve it. You know, it's not over until it's over, until third reading, and I'm not in no hurry. What I just want to do is something that improves things. I think ensuring that we have a commitment to the Barnes Fund will help everybody in Nashville to some extent.
You said you can't talk about specific pieces of legislation, but amongst council members, you must talk amongst each other about issues facing this city. That's your job. You hear from your constituents. How often does affordable housing come up these days?
I think it's an important topic. Lots of people talk about it. For me, I was talking to you about this veteran before. I remember this veteran because I was there building this ramp for him. So I met very diverse groups of people in Nashville that suffer and they need help. And so for me, it's not just some abstract thing that I read on a book. It's real people that I met over many years that are just happen to have a handicap or an issue that with a little bit of help they can stay in the city and be productive. I don't know that many in the council had the luxury of experiences what I experienced. So my point of view is usually a little bit unique, and I have been very passionate about it because of that. I was the ad hoc chair, the chair of the ad hoc Affordable Housing Committee. I was one of the sponsors of the legislation that got the conversation going on affordable housing. But I always feel that people get confused about what are we talking about.
Yes.
And this is really talking about our neighbors, people we know already that struggle where a leak on the roof is a simple thing as a leak. Yes. People will get really sick if they start getting mold in the house, and it creates all kinds of health problems. So sometimes if we can help these homeowners, these neighbors of ours, to be able to do these small fixes to their houses, we ensure that they will stay in the community and be productive for years to come.
And let me ask you this, if this is really striking a chord with somebody who is sitting at home saying, that's my situation, I just need to improve this bathroom, or I don't know what I'm going to do or where I'm going to go, can they contact the Barnes Fund? How does that work?
They can contact, but the Barnes Fund won't help individuals. They they work with agencies, but they can call the Barnes Fund and they will give them information. And that number is available on the website, on the Metro website. But there are many nonprofits that help people, from Rebuilding Together Nashville. MDHA has a program where they do home repairs. Many churches will do repairs. When you work with volunteers, you are stretching that dollar. And so it is, I like the idea of nonprofits because they can leverage donations and contributions to stretch that dollar and help more people. So there are a variety of programs, and the best thing they can do is to call the Barnes Fund to get some more information. I also set up, when I was the chair, I set up a Facebook page, the Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Committee page, but there is plenty of information.
Probably the best thing, call the Barnes Fund and then work backwards. They can give you some ideas.
Yes.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we would love to hear from you about ideas that go along with this ordinance proposal, and we'll come back and talk about that. Stay with us.